Welcome to I Start Wondering, a podcast about journaling. My name is Brenda Nettles Rojas. I'm very blessed to be one of the columnists for I Start Wondering, and my topic of late has been journaling. And joining me today is Lydia Pesina, who is the director for the Family Life Office here in the Diocese of Brownsville. And Lydia, welcome.
Well, thank you. Love the invitation.
It's been great to see how our friendship has developed over the years. We've been working for, I know you have a long history with the diocese, and we've been friends for close to 30 years.
Absolutely.
And you are a lifelong journaler,
yes.
a journaler. And so we want to talk about that today because we have so many stories, and at different, I'm sure that, and we'll share that during different phases of our lives. Maybe as a young girl, I called it a diary.
Exactly.
And now, as we proceed, it's taken on a different feel, a different approach. Tell me a little bit about your journaling life.
And I think when you said that about, we started off with a diary, I still have my very first diary. I was in 8th grade, so I remember exactly. It was a gift to me from my friend Judy Penman. We were in band. And I just thought it was the greatest little thing. And I still have it. It had a little key. I would hide the key because I had 2 older brothers. And I knew that if it didn't have a key, they were going to read my diary.
And did they ever look for it?
I don't know. They probably did.
I found out years later that my sister had gone through my diary. She's like, they were so boring.
Well, actually, I lent one to a friend of mine quite a few years ago, that particular one. And she said, you sure do go to church a lot, which is kind of funny. But one of the things that for me is very significant about that one is because as I look back, it was just, some of it was very mundane. Mm-hmm. Today I did this, I did that, whatever, I helped clean house, whatever it was. But I have the entry of when I met my husband, Mauri. And we've been married for 51 years now. I was 14 years old, almost 15. It was the last day of school, my freshman year. And I have the entry, today was the last day of school. My friend Letty and Mary and I went to this going out of school dance. I danced with so-and-so and so-and-so. And I read about 10 names because in those days we danced with everybody. And I said, but I met a very nice boy named Mauricio Pesina. I think he likes me. So last year, in our 50th wedding anniversary celebration, I read that entry along with some other things that we had taken to talk about our life together. But there's something very special about the written word, whether it's in diary form that just says this is what happened today, or whether it's just, ponderings or, some frustrations or whatever's going on in our life at the time.
Yeah, and then the fact that you could go back and revisit that.
Exactly. I like to read at night, and sometimes my time is very limited, but I like to read something serious, having to do either with my work or things that I want to learn about, and something very light. And when I don't have a light novel, I'll read one of my journals. I'll go, and sometimes reading them is so interesting because I think I didn't remember that. One of the things I discovered some time ago as I was going through one of my old journals is at one point I was using one of those pens that has the different colored, like red.
Yes.
And it seemed like I was writing, over one topic in red and one topic in green. And fast forward a year later, I was still writing about the same topic in the same color. So there's something about the way our mind works, I think, that is very intuitive. So I'm not sure what that means exactly, other than I'm weird. But I think there's something about the mind that's very intuitive about what is important in our lives, what we find important to record for ourselves, mm-hmm. or for others, whatever it happens to be, and what is important to recall. And so I just think that it's a fascinating part of journaling.
And that there's different aspects, mm-hmm. of our lives. And so I think it was interesting how the different colors, mm-hmm. were for different points.
Yeah, I think it was fascinating. And I think, I know that I got inspired, I think, to a great degree from my grandfather, Dionisio Reina. And my grandfather did not have a single day of formal education. he taught himself to read in English and Spanish, and he wrote in Spanish. And he kept these large journals, because they said journals, but they were, you know what I'm talking about. They're big and
more like ledgers.
Yes, like ledgers. But he kept all kinds of things in his ledgers, journals. And if he bought a cow or sold a pig, he had the drawings of the undercarriage of a vehicle, a field, and how it was drawn. And he had like a love note to my grandmother in it that I found. My uncle lent me his journals years later. And he had a short story that he wrote about the Mexican Revolution. His younger brother had gone off to war, and he called it Entre las Balas. And it's just a short story, but I think it's very well written. We never would be privy to knowing what happened, like in the Mexican Revolution. I mean, a personal account. And in the short story, he tells about how they were going by, and he was allowed to go see his family for a few hours. So it was Entre las Balas, and I just think there's just something very special about the written word.
Absolutely, and it speaks to the importance, the how it's part of our legacy or part of our stories that we leave and that we pass on to future generations, whether it's our own family members or people who were interested in history and what was happening at the time.
Exactly.
If we don't, I always say, if we don't tell our stories, who will?
Yeah.
And so it's important to record our stories. And we're at the age where we're both grandmothers now.
Exactly.
Some people call it the third stage of our lives, or whatever stage it is that women are in. That's important to think back. I've lived this incredible life. I need to put it down. Because if I don't tell my story, who will? And our stories do matter. And not only that, it allows us to reflect and see patterns that maybe we want to change, because we're works in progress no matter the age.
Always.
and then also it helps us to give gratitude and to see the many blessings in our lives. There's so much research lately about how sharing gratitude for the day, or finding that gratitude for the day, really impacts the mind and the longevity compared to focusing on the negative. So I think we can learn from those moments in our lives that were struggles or that were storms, and how we survived them or how we proceeded through them. And maybe, okay, if we go back or as we reflect, we can think, I could have done things differently. I might have done things, this is how I might handle it now. And it helps us too on how to be able to give better advice to family or friends. So much to take in.
It is. And, like you said, writing takes on so many different ways. Sometimes I look at my journals and it really is more like my 8th grade diary, today this happened. Other times it's just deeper, something that I'm contemplating. And how those of us that like journals pick up, books here and there.
I know.
And I picked up one recently that had some prompters, and I like prompters. Like, I woke up feeling whatever. And it said some of the stressful things of the day were blah, blah, so it has some of the, how did it say it? Some of the wonderful things about the day were, et cetera. And then there was something else at the bottom which I chose to change, just to be more like, what are things I'm grateful for, that I need guidance from the Holy Spirit, just something. But it helps me to look at the different aspects, and it also makes a variety in the way that I write.
Right, absolutely.
So, and like you said, we leave it to our family. I know some time ago I told my daughter, I said, I don't know what's going to happen to these, because I don't. I mean, somebody's just going to pick it up and trash it. Like my uncle that had my grandfather's journals, he passed away during COVID. His present wife, because he had been widowed, was not in real good terms with his daughters, so we don't know what happened to them. And to me, that was like, things are things, but I think there's just something very special about being able to have something that, I thought about my grandfather yesterday, because it was October 9th, and he was born October 9th, 1898. And so to think about what was going on in life at that time is just such a gift.
Again, it's a treasure trove of information that we need to preserve. And I think you made a really good point, because there's a lot of people who are asking, well, I'm not comfortable that they're, you come to a blank page and sometimes you get paralyzed by the blank page. But having a prompt or a question or something to guide that conversation on the page is very helpful. So prompts are very helpful. And through I Start Wondering, we're trying to provide more prompts for people. And I'm very fortunate that Lydia and I, whenever we have a chance to meet, we give each other prompts, and we set aside 7 minutes. And so no matter how busy and we're juggling a lot, your work and family life and grandchildren and everything in between, all the things that we say yes to, I think it's time to think about saying yes to ourselves and to our stories. So I always appreciate that we take 7 minutes, we put the timer, we think of some prompts before we set the timer, because we need every minute of those 7 minutes, and we write together in our own journals or whatever we happen to have, even loose leaf paper if that's what it is. And we're often surprised, right, by what we find emerged.
And what it emerges within our psyche and our emotions. Like sometimes it's like, I didn't know that's where it was going.
We'll have the same prompts, and sometimes it'll be, okay, let's work in like right now, let's work in something from the season, and if it's something that's happening in our lives, I think one day we were talking about virtues, another day we were talking about struggles and change, and we'll just start with 3 or 4 words or prompts, if you will, and we end up sometimes with similar things, but then something drastically different, because it's where our mind,
and drastically different from we thought when we started putting that pen to the paper.
Yes.
It just flows differently.
It does, and it's a great intro to sit down and journal further on that.
Yeah, and it's very cathartic, because often we, like you said, most women at whatever age, we have a lot of plates to juggle. And so we don't always make or take the opportunity to do something that's reflective, and journaling, I think, is very reflective.
So when do you journal? I know that we journal together and set the timer for 7 minutes, so grab a friend, grab a timer, grab a journal or some paper and a pen, and take that time to put it to paper. But when else do you journal?
And for me, at night, and I'm pretty methodical. So, there's something that I listen to when I'm getting ready for bed, and then certain prayers, and I like to, like I said, read something serious, and I like to journal at that time, because then I feel like it's almost a review of our day, even if it's not necessarily to say what happened A to Z, but just what were the things that stood out. And also at the end, what is it that I would like to grow to, or what do I want to do, or what am I concerned about, or what I feel like I need the Holy Spirit's help to help me in the future, and the next day.
Yeah, I like to journal when I'm journaling focused on diving deep in the morning. I like to set a candle, have some tea, have started with some prayers. But then I do have, like right now I'm carrying what I call, I even did some mixed media on it. I call it my field notes.
Oh, neat.
And this is what I call my daily captures. And I try to capture an image of the day, the weather, a sound of the day, an activity, and an encounter. And those are kind of my daily captures. So for my daily captures, and that's why I really have enjoyed this little one, I either do during the day or at night, try to quickly, because too, memory, there's so many blessings in our days, and so much happening, that if we don't pause and take time to capture some of that, it's fleeting. And in this world where it's so fast-paced, and we're both guilty of that, moving on from one thing to the next, it is important to capture. And there's different styles of capturing. I know that we've talked about different types of journals as well.
And I think, the audience may be primarily women, And it's certainly something that maybe more women gravitate to. I'm not sure, but I know my son-in-law, Dathan, likes to journal, and that reminded me because he has a field journal. He's a paramedic, so he takes that with him. And then he's very particular about what kind of paper it is and what kind of pen it is. And but you know, somehow that medium speaks to different people in different ways. And I think more than anything for me, I think it's an opportunity for reflection. And you know, what's the quote of the unreflected mind? I can't think of it. You know, that because unless we are pausing enough minutes or time to reflect on who we are and where we are, then I imagine it would be too easy for us to become stagnant. And life is forever moving. The time is going to move regardless. But if we can reflect on where we're coming from, and that's why it's good to be able to read for me, some of the journals from the past, where we are today, and perhaps where, you know, we feel that we're being called to go to in the future.
That is so well put. I mean, I have so many other questions, and the conversation could continue. But I think that's a good place to pause for this podcast. And we'll continue maybe in another day to continue our conversation. But definitely a lot to think about and encourage each other in that, putting our stories down, putting our thoughts on paper, and because our stories matter and our ideas matter, and that pause matters, and that time for reflection. Thank you, Lydia, so much for joining us.
You're quite welcome.
And again,
this is fun.
Grab a friend, grab a journal, loose leaf paper, whatever you have on hand, a marker, a pen, whatever, and do take time to journal together, and then journal on your own as well. And we'll talk later about making it a routine, or creating those sacred spaces to journal. Thank you so much, Lydia.
Welcome. Thanks for the invitation.